Well, Dan, what do you say we talk to Gene in Texas?
Gene in Texas? Absolutely. Let's do it.
You had some questions about a verse in Matthew 10. What's on your mind?
Yes. Well, here's the thing. I did call in last week, and, I watch like 3 shows of y'all's on Sunday. I'm going, which one was it? Anyway, I brought this up, that there's a problematic set of verses in Matthew 10 that make Christianity look pretty bogus, okay?
All right, yeah.
And I've never heard them referred to in any of the shows, and I've watched like a few hundred.
Well, I mean, where were you when we were on our last call? Honestly, like, what are these verses? Maybe there's a possibility God's sign is still watching.
Okay, yeah, maybe. Okay, well, it starts. It's Matthew 10, verse 1. Mm-hmm. The disciples are named at that point, so you know who Jesus is talking to. All 12 of them show up there, and this is where Jesus is telling them. Giving them instructions on what to do before he returns, before the second coming, while he's gone. And one of the things he says is, do not preach my message to any Gentiles or Samaritans. My message is for the children of the house of the lost sheep of Israel only. Mm-hmm. Well, the Jews. Okay,
yeah.
I'm like, well, I'm not Jewish.
Yeah.
So apparently, according to this, I'm never even supposed to.
Yeah, it's weird how you draw your theology. Like, do you include just the Gospels? Because then you better be Jewish. If you want to go beyond that, when, Paul makes these things available to us unclean Gentiles, then, all right, that's a different conversation. But now we got to bring Paul and all of his baggage into all of this.
Exactly. Well, then it continues, though. It even gets worse. Then he tells them he's only going to be gone. Like there's the verses also in Matthew and Mark and Luke where he says, some of you will still be living when I return, right?
Right.
Okay, well, in this particular one, he says, not only that, it's going to happen so fast, you won't even have time to walk all the way through Israel preaching my message.
Yeah.
I'm coming back before you get done. Well, that's a pretty short period of time we're talking about here. Okay, so I'm like, okay, well, that's a problem. That's a problematic thing. Now, I think what happened was I was so excited, and I'd had a confrontation with some people at a convenience store, specifically one guy, but there were 2 other people present on the Friday prior, and when this guy who, because of his belief system, referred to LGBTQ in disparaging ways, even going so far as to call them an abomination. Mm-hmm. And I jumped all over him, not physically, but it looked like it was going to get physical until one of the guys there said, hey, dude, this isn't worth it. And I had to agree it wasn't.
Sure.
It wasn't. That's not going to change his mind, And we actually parted friendly. I shook his hand. I said, I'm sorry for getting on him that way. I just disagree with him strongly about that. See? And so that consequently, a couple of days later, when I make the phone call, I'm all excited and everything. And I think I may have made it sound like that when I referred to these verses, that it was proof positive that the belief, the religious belief system of Jesus and so on and so forth was absolutely bogus, that it was proof, you see. And I did not mean to convey that. Yeah. What I meant to convey was that it's just severely problematic.
It is problematic for a lot of reasons. So let's talk about this issue, right? So if you actually read the Gospels, okay, again, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, back to back, you're going to find a very different version of Jesus in each one. Some similarities, sure, but there's some weird differences that you don't expect. If you start with Mark, you're going to find a Jesus that does miracles and then tells people don't tell other people about it. Seriously, like that's a very the running theme in this. And you wonder, wait, isn't the whole point to tell Jesus and to tell about the good news?
Well,
of
the
Jesus?
first 2 rules of Fight Club, Dan.
Right. It is Jesus Fight Club. It literally is. It's I just leaned back in the chair so hard that I just kind of flipped for a second.
Did Jesus keep you from falling over?
Bro, Jesus took the wheel, dude. That was crazy. Anyway,
God is so good.
Okay, anyway, so what was I saying? So I was really distracted by that. So there's these weird different depictions of Jesus, right? And you see these differences. Here's another one that you're talking about here, this verse in Matthew 10, who says, actually, don't bring this message to the Gentiles. We want to bring this to the people, of Israel, right? And even in the earliest days of Christianity, you can go as far as the book of Acts, where Peter, the number one apostle of Jesus, right? Like Jesus' biggest fan, is getting into arguments with Paul, a guy who never met Jesus, on who this message is actually for. And the weird part is, it is recorded in these texts of them disagreeing on whether there's these different interpretations of what Jesus' message even is and who the message is for and who is saved. And this is really weird. Why would there be these disagreements? And it's because these books are all written at different time periods, at least 40 years off or so from when Jesus was allegedly around. And there was already sectarian differences between the early Christian church. Even in the very beginning, there were these splittings in these interpretations of what the message of Jesus was, what he came down to earth to do, and how we're supposed to interpret it. And even later on, in some of the New Testament letters, they mention this fact of, you may have heard that Jesus was to return in our lifetime. Well, actually, that's kind of a
got an update coming in.
It's more of a metaphor here. It really could be at any time, and we have to expect. They're literally doing this kind of backpedaling, right at the beginning, because there was an interpretation of Christianity that said, yes, Jesus is coming back within our lifetime, it's going to happen. I'm talking like 2012 apocalypse style, that's the year the Mayans were talking about, not some other, that was kind of
right.
their feelings on it. So yeah, what it demonstrates isn't that Jesus was bogus. What it's really more accurately, I think, is reflecting is that these were written by different people at different times with different interpretations of Jesus. And the truth is, there's never been one universal idea.
Even if you take the Bible as the perfect and inerrant word of God, which, we kind of already talked about that today.
Yeah.
It does fall apart.
Yeah. That's my long-winded way of, describing that. So what do you think?
Yeah. I did. Excellent. I do have one other question for you. This thing has always mystified me, this other thing, and that is this. I wonder if you guys have ever heard of, now this is a Southern Baptist thing. I was indoctrinated very strongly. I'm 67 currently, but thankfully it never took hold. When I was 5, I went, okay, this is bogus. But that was a luck of the draw thing, really. Just luck of the draw. I lucked out. I dodged the bullet, essentially. But I was still had to go to church 3 times a week, and plus vacation Bible school, singing in the choir, and all that kind of stuff. One of the other things that I was required to do was every Wednesday night there was a meeting called the RAs. Does RA mean anything to you guys? You ever heard of that?
No. RAs.
Okay, it stands.
Yeah, not a resident advisor.
That's what I was thinking.
It's an acronym for Royal Ambassador. Okay. And it's sort of like the Boy Scouts of the Southern Baptist Convention. Okay. And we would have these meetings on Wednesday nights. So we did get to do some cool things, such as going camping and stuff like that, But the girls had their own thing called GAs, which previously stood for Girls Auxiliary. Oops. Auxiliary. Careful with that. Hey.
Yeah.
So they realized
somebody has to back up the royalty, right?
Yeah. I figured the Boy Scouts would be the Boy Scouts of the Southern Baptist Convention.
Now, when the Boy Scouts are too liberal for you, then you might just be a Southern Baptist.
Yeah.
Right. Well, anyway, so here's the deal. They changed Girls Auxiliary to Girls in Action. Okay.
Oh, well.
Girls in Action.
I
think Christy's talked about that tape on secular sexuality before.
Right. Yeah. But I was surprised because, of course, Matt Dillahunty, as I understand it, was Southern Baptist. And he never has mentioned the RAs. And I thought I was under the assumption back at that time that it was a pretty much across the board Southern Baptist thing. I do know that many churches in Texas were involved in it. And that it was just something you were expected to send your kids to.
I don't know. I think both of us know a lot of Southern Baptists. I've never heard of it. Have you?
Yeah, it's new on me.
Well, the mystery deepens.
Yep.
Okay. So I just thought I'd throw that out there. Maybe one day I'll get a chance to ask Matt about it.
Yeah, maybe so. That's something I got to look into more. The royal ambassadors. I'm sure there's some sort of scandal that could be found.
I mean, you start digging, like it'll
Especially
be
if
there.
the Southern Baptist Convention is involved. I think.
Yeah, seriously. I think the one of the reasons we're probably not talking about it is because that's like 10 layers deep, and there's so much dirt on the first, second, third, fourth, and fifth layer.
Right. Yeah, there's probably something there too. But thanks for your call. That was good talking about some of the more like weirder verses of the Bible, like when you like detail for detail that just kind of like again don't really make
fall
sense.
apart. Yeah. I mean, I'll tell you, one of the first like true, I guess, slivers that kind of like started to separate me from my faith was I thought I would be a very good Christian, and I would not only read my Bible every day, but I would read my Bible every day in such a way that I could read the entire Bible every year. And so I started reading a chronological Bible where every day it would give you, however many verses, but it would be not in the order that we are all familiar with, but rather chronologically how it happens. So when you get to the Gospels, when you get to like Chronicles versus Kings and some of these parts of the Bible, you would see just plainly right next to each other, was it 1 million men or was it 1,000 men?
Right.
And that, I mean, as an evangelical, that really shook the notion for me that the Bible was the perfect, inerrant Word of God. And it's just challenging.
It is. And when you become a more advanced, when you get to a level 3 atheist.
Right, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, you do realize.
I'm still waiting for my decoder ring.
Right. There are, like, legitimate explanations for the differences in some contradictions, alleged contradictions that, like, do make sense or can be interpreted to where they would make sense. But there are some hard ones, like the numbers situation there, where it's like, these are just two different values. I don't know how you can.
Yeah, and for me, like, I feel like I talked about this last time I was on the show, and I don't mean to harp on it overly much because I recognize that for the vast majority of the time that Christianity has been a thing, the number of people who have tried to read into it in this like perfect, inerrant, every single letter in the Bible is supposed to be there kind of way, that's a relatively new idea, and I appreciate that. And if you continue to be a theist without believing that notion, okay, totally fair. But like also, if it requires that much interpretation, if it if this all-knowing, perfect God, even if the Bible isn't perfect, if God is perfect, why the hell can't he give us a perfect book?
Yeah.
Why is that imperfect vessel his strategy for trying to convince people? And you start pulling on that thread.
It seems like communication would be really important. Like, seems like you want to get that message like super clear. You know what I mean? So, I don't know.
It's pretty foundational.
He needs to give us an update. A new book, maybe? Oh, Book of Mormon. Okay.
Oh, right,
All right, never mind.